Good afternoon
Yeah.
and welcome. We're hoping everybody's having a great week. We are preparing for a little divergence from our week of RF. We have spent an enormous amount of time talking wireless. Don't worry, we'll be back to it. We're not leaving it forever. But today is more about trying to broaden our horizons and to really embrace the idea of this single road that's fiber in most of the time, and the idea of sharing the road, audio, comms, video, data, IP traffic, things like that. So that's what today's going to be about. We're going to be chatting with Bill. I should say Bill is going to be sharing a lot of his insights with us, and we'll probably be interrupting him at inopportune times, but we'll do our best. But Bill, East Shore Sound is your company, and one of the things that's interesting about Bill is that Bill has always been an early adopter of anything and everything. The first time I remember seeing a lot of his gear was with the Roland fiber system you were using for your 4-wire intercom. You're an unconventional thinking person, and that's not to say that all the gear that we're going to talk about today is unconventional, but you're always thinking about how to apply gear, what is the right gear for an application. Before we do that, I'm going to just stop for a second. And Pete, why don't you talk to us about Q&A real quickly, right? How we do this. We've kind of got this system figured out a little, and just fill them in, and then we'll drop back over to Bill.
Sure. So on the right-hand side of your screen, right down here on the bottom, there is a pull-down menu that says questions, and you can open that and type a question in. We will get that question. Not all of you will see the question, but we're going to select from them questions that actually apply to the subject we're talking about today, and we'll pass them on to Bill. So please feel free to say anything in the question thing. If you want to say, hi, Bill, you can do that too. We may even pass that on. So we're going to start now. Enjoy the show.
Yeah, and hey, Bill, before we jump into your presentation, I'll have Pete make you a presenter, but would you mind giving us just a quick tour of what you have behind you? Your shop is the perfect example of the cross-platform that is the world we live in. And thanks for joining us too.
Stand by, let me get the proper screen up here, and we'll be happy to show the screen.
Yeah.
There we go. So hopefully you see that right now. And Tim, can you bring up the camera there? So here's a quick tour around the office. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about MediorNet, and that'll be the focus of the gear. This is all set up. We just did a recent firmware update before we closed down the office here. And as you look around the office, you're going to notice there's a whole bunch of gear on the shelves. And I'm guessing that everybody's shop looks like this right now, too. We never have all our gear in the shop, but here it is. So, we have platforms for every occasion. We have a little bit of ClearCom. We still have some RTS 2-wire. We have an RTS matrix frame. Coming around the horn here, we do have some Riedel. The big rack there at the end, you'll see, is our networking rack that we take out on shows with us. In the background, we have my son Tim, who's home from school right now, and a little production switcher there that we tried to put together for today. So there's lots of gear on the shelf, and we're going to see how we can make some of that gear available to future presentations here on the show. As Kelly mentioned, we like to think of ourselves as early adopters. We've been pushing network type hardware around to show sites for probably a good 10, 12 years now. Part of that's a little self-serving. I don't like pulling heavy copper stuff. Fiber's certainly much lighter and a little bit more bandwidth than a piece of 56 pair or 27 pairs in the truck world, and gives you a whole lot more bandwidth and a whole lot more options. So that's why we try to push that kind of stuff out. And I like differentiating my company a little bit by trying to be on the leading edge of what we're doing. So we'll try not to bore you here, but I do have a couple PowerPoint slides that we'll share with you to just kind of start with an overview of what MediorNet is and the history of it. We'll try to keep that brief so as not to bore everybody. But Tim, if you want to bring up the PowerPoint, we'll go ahead and get started on that. So let's see. Do we have the PowerPoint? Technical difficulties already? Oh no. Stand by.
Oh, don't worry about that. This is kind of how things go with us. We believe in live webinars, man. In the MediorNet platform, we'll be talking with Riedel next week. They'll be sharing with us on Tuesday about MediorNet from the factory perspective. But we thought it'd be pretty neat to just hear from folks that are applying it. Sometimes we start with the factory, sometimes we start with the field. In this case, we're going to start with the field and kind of Bill's unvarnished thoughts about just production life in general and technology. So I'm going to switch off here and it's yours.
All right, we look like we're back up and running. And here we go. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Riedel, they've been around for a long time. Started back in 1987 in Germany. They've done a whole bunch of stuff beginning in 1987. Their first Olympic Games was 1994. And in today's world, it's hard to find a show that doesn't have something from Riedel on it. Anything from Formula One to Red Bull to with the launch of Bolero, most any live show you do, it seems to have been heavily adopted by most of the production community. So MediorNet is a real-time media network. We've been at this for about 5 years with Riedel. At the time, part of our business is renting video hardware, especially monitors for live production events. And we were getting into fiber transport, and I didn't want to buy old technology. I wanted to buy the up and coming stuff, and that's when we started adopting MediorNet. The system has a total of some pretty low latency, as you can see there on the slide. You can do other things than just pass video from point to point. You can embed, you can de-embed, has frame syncs on all the outputs. All-in-one system, and Riedel likes to say all over one cable, and I say sort of because it's not just one cable, and we'll get into that a little later. In traditional production environments, one source, one path, one piece of copper, one path. So whether it's fiber or copper, it's a signal per path kind of infrastructure. And what MediorNet does is takes all the mess of wires and different signal types and puts it into a common backbone. Now, there are pros and cons to this. Some of the people that don't like the concept of MediorNet say, yeah, but if one thing fails, then everything fails. And there is some merit to that, but there's redundancies in the system that you'll see as we go through here that hope to mitigate that. All right, clicking through a couple other slides. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of it. This is how MediorNet does what it does. And there are two standards with MediorNet. They started with their modular system probably 10, 12 years ago. And that was based on 4.25 gigabit links. And when I say link, what I mean is that's one connection point between two different nodes. So over at the time, what was two strands of fiber, one transmit, one receive. So each link is bidirectional. You had 4.25 gigabits of bandwidth. And as far as audio goes, that's a huge pipe. When you get into passing video around, that becomes a commodity in short supply at 4.25 gigs. So just real quick in this slide, what it's demonstrating is how it breaks up the signal, multiplexes it via TDM, and sends it across those links. Next slide. So in MediorNet, you can use point-to-point, you can use point-to-multipoint, and you can use ring and star topology, as well as a combination of both. And we'll bring up some live hardware here in a little bit and show you what that's all about. Just blowing through some of these real quick because I don't want to bore everybody. They do have some integrated processing, including a multi-viewer and embedding, de-embedding. And the biggest thing that I think is the selling point for MediorNet is if your system is properly configured and you build enough redundancy into your system, you can have a path interrupted, broken, somebody cuts the fiber, and as long as you have enough redundant bandwidth in your system and the system is set up properly, it will reroute those signals inside of about 2 or 3 frames of video, so quickly that most people can't even see the switch. And that's the argument to one source, one signal, when people say, well, you're putting all your eggs in one basket, but the way you're doing it now, there isn't redundancy. You have to count on the human being sitting behind the video switcher, sitting behind the audio desk to figure out that there was a problem and then react to it. Whereas, again, if it's set up properly, MediorNet will take care of that redundancy for you. There's 3 different platforms. Like I said, they started out with their modular hardware with 4.25 gig links. The advantage to this was there were different processing cards and different input-output cards, so you could configure the system for your application. It was a little cost prohibitive, and again, the 4.25 gig links were somewhat limiting. To drive down the cost, they brought out the MediorNet Compact series, again 4.25 gig links, more cost effective because there were 3 different models to it, and you bought the pre-configured packages in one of those 3 models. And then the most recent release is their Micron series. The biggest step up with Micron is that it is based on 10 gigabit links. So that's about 2.5 times the bandwidth per link. Also with these, you can use bidirectional SFPs. So now you've increased your bandwidth and you've also reduced your fiber count because they're using bidirectional SFPs to send and receive over a single strand of fiber. We'll go into the next slide here. This is a closer look up at their modular series. This is something that actually is kind of being phased out by Riedel right now. You're not going to see this in their product offering much longer. We have 1 or 2 systems in our inventory, and I'll get into why as we go through this. Here's some of the different cards that they have to offer for that system. And the Ethernet 6 card is 6 Ethernet ports. Now, we said that MediorNet is point to multi-point. The one exception to that is in the networking tunnels. So you can set your networking tunnels up as 10 gig, 100 gig, or I'm sorry, 10 meg, 100 meg, or gigabit links. And they are truly just links, just like you were using a pair of media converters to go from point A to point B. So in my application, if I'm sitting a node truck side and I have 5 different router panels throughout the field that I need to send an Ethernet connection to because the router panels are Ethernet based, I need to set a switch at the side of the truck to give me multiple copies of that Ethernet signal, because once I put it into the MediorNet system, there's no routing involved. It is truly point to point links. And they were intentional in doing that because they didn't want to get into routing and what packets are passing. They just want to have the link happen so you can use it for lighting, you can use it for audio, you can use it for video, you can use it for data, you can use whatever it is whatever you plug in one end is giving you a copy of that at the other end. Those are the link cards. Again, since they're phasing that out, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. The compact series, again, lower price point, fully backwards compatible, and offers the embedding, the de-embedding. If you look at the common features for all the units, they're all in the same chassis. They all have the capacity to do up to 12 links, and they have a sync input and output connection on them. Beyond that, the basic doesn't have a whole lot of connectivity on it. Just a little bit there, 2 SDI in and out, 2 DisplayPort, 2 RJ45s for artist AES connections, 1 MADI, 1 serial, 1 Ethernet, 2 mic line in and outs. Expansion, and the Pro gives you a whole lot more connectivity here. So you 4 SD in and out that's expandable with water so that you can do 8x DisplayPort.
Bill, let me interrupt you just for a second. I'm going to turn your camera off because we're getting a little bandwidth problem here, just the video audio.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the going back to, you have in and out that's expandable with a collection of options for have up to 4 connections for artist AES, so you can pair artist. You get 2 MADI connections, 2 serial connections, 3 Ethernet ports, 4 mic line in and outs, a bunch of GPIOs, and an OLED display locally on the frame. That is a company Riedel acquired. It gives you additional I/O capability. The limitation to this is in our days of MADI and everybody wanting to do 96K, RockNet has limitations there. So this is a great tool to get analog audio converted either to MediorNet or to MADI. Again, the limitation though is in what the conversion in RockNet limits you to. What else can we say? MediorNet devices provide interface for the RockNet audio network, again, natively to RockNet or again through MADI, depending on what hardware you have. Here's the expansion cards we were talking about. So there's additional outputs, additional inputs are 4x4, and you can also do some HDI connectivity on it. They pre-configure the fiber ports so that you can do optical con quadr duo. You can do LC duplex. You can do dual STs, and that's something that they do at the factory. Going on to the Micron, you'll notice the chassis looks a little different. Basically, the hardware is the same. What changes is the applications that you can apply to this hardware. So you get 12 BNC connectors for inputs, 12 BNC connectors for outputs, 1 sync input and 1 sync output, as well as 1 Ethernet tunnel. That's it. But the huge advantage here is you're working with each link being 10 gigabit. So you can push rough numbers, 6 SDI video signals in each direction between frames. So with 2 links, you can pretty well max out what this will do, and then you have your other links available for redundancy. That is with the standard app that comes with this. They also sell an app for multi-view. They sell an app for IP-based stuff, and they're coming out with more apps in the future that will be applicable towards this hardware. All right, rolling through a couple more slides here. I mentioned this earlier. The cool MediorNet is the ability to embed, de-embed audio. So in the corporate setting, when we've used this, we hand off a MADI connection to the audio console. The that are seeing video with embedded audio, no longer do you have to embed that as analog and plug it into your. If across MediorNet, we can just give you those channels as MADI. We can give them to you as analog. Really, whatever your preference is to get those to your audio console. Likewise, we can take your program feeds and embed them along with the program video before we send those out and distribute them. You can frame synchronize, you can delay the audio, and we'll get into all of that a little bit when we get into the software. I will say that these slides are a little old. This was one that showed that for this functionality, the low side of the market was 14K, the high side of the market was 20K, and Micron was right in the middle around 15K. Again, those are old prices, so please don't use them when you go looking to buy hardware. We talked about the redundant connections a little bit. You can also do a ring topology, or you can do a little bit of mesh network where it's a combination of ring and star. It is basically, I like to describe it as a node-based video router, so that rather than your video router all being in one case or one rack in a production truck, you can take this and put modules where you need the I/O connectivity and then connect them. One of the other things that's great about it that, again, when we switch to the software, we'll get into is the real-time diagnostics that it provides for the system. This is showing the multi-viewer concept. When you do use the multi-viewer app, you do lose some I/O connectivity because it's using the processing power that it would use for those inputs and outputs to generate the multi-view signals. Let's see what we got here. When you get into the multi-viewer, I believe it's a total of 18 picture-in-pictures that you can do. So you can do a couple of 4x4 splits. You can do 9x9. You can do a 1x16 or 1x18, depending on what you want to put into it. You can do a combination of all of them. There's audio options. There's an internal clock. Just depends how you want to configure it. Couple more slides here. So again, with the standard app, you get 12x12. The IP, your I/O is 4x4, and the multi-viewer, your I/O is 4x4. And then we need to talk quickly about the Metron. The Metron is basically a central router. The times that we find this most useful is when we're deploying a large network, or we're in, say, a convention center and you have a central fiber patch room. If you use the Metron at that point, you can save yourself a lot of fiber cabling back and forth to your master control, because you can just locate the Metron where all the fiber cross connects. It adds a layer of mesh capability to your system, so you're not limited to just 8 links between every frame. You can do up to 64 10 gig links. It also has some sync and some Ethernet tunneling available on that hardware. All right. Let's go through a couple more slides here. Again, kind of a decentralized video router is how I like to best describe it. Yeah, it runs on Java currently, and you can't pre-program without your hardware there. That is a drawback. but they're working on some fixes to that. But it does, again, offer multi-user support and real-time monitoring of the system. This is one of the views within the software, and again, when we get over to the software, we can take a real-time look at that. It just kind of shows you each of your node locations and the data about those links between the nodes. And one of my favorite things about the system is the fiber status meter. There's a lot of devices that we all use in the industry now that we're kind of guessing whether we're getting good light level in or out. Hopefully you have a couple of pieces of fiber testing equipment in your toolbox and can read light levels and things like that, but it's still not a sure thing. You know, do you have an intermittent fiber that is causing sparkles across your video, or, you know, the signal kind of comes and goes? Which one of those connection points is that at? Within the application, you see a little gas gauge where it shows green is a good signal, and red is either too high or too low, depending on where the gas gauge is. Yes, you can have too much light, and it'll show you that. And then it also shows you the percentage of usage of that link. How much bandwidth of that link are you using? That shows you all your links on all your nodes, and it can be a tremendously powerful troubleshooting tool. We didn't talk about the glue processing at all. Basically, there's a frame sync. You can insert some text. You can embed. You can de-embed on the input side, and it's available on every path, if you will. There is some video format conversion that's available depending on which piece of hardware you're using. And we'll get into some applications. This is a corporate show I worked on with Alfred Media. We used a combination of Artist and RockNet and MediorNet to distribute signals throughout a convention center. One of the coolest things we did was, if you see the cart in the lower right-hand corner there, that was a remote cart that had a couple of wireless mics on it, a couple of IFBs so that they could talk back to the talent. It had an RF camera that the receive electronics were there locally on the cart. It had some intercom, and all of that was able to travel across 2 strands of fiber. We requested 4 so that we had redundancy, but everything in the convention center was across 2 strands of fiber. And if you're ever on the billing side of a convention center, you know that they like to charge for their in-house fiber infrastructure, and it can be a little frustrating because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you spend your whole week on site trying to work with the fiber guy trying to get it to work. So with the MediorNet, we get 2 clean strands, we get actually 4 clean strands, and we have 100% redundancy to this remote cart. We were able to send tally from master control across to the camera. We were able to get paint control from the camera and the CCU that was there back to master control, so the video operator in master control could paint. And because the system is a Genlock system, we were able to send reference that they were able to put into the CCU and time that camera into their switcher and avoid a significant amount of audio video delay between the picture and the audio, because everything was timed. We didn't have to take the video through a frame sync. It was already part of the system. So that was a really great application of multiple signals being distributed back and forth to one location all across a couple of strands of fiber. This is something we did for the Capitol concert shows that we work on. We deployed from the TV truck to various locations around the site for everything from program video feeds to prompter feeds to some intercom at remote locations. Saved an amount of time and consequently money with the amount of fiber we had to pull to different locations. And it's also gives the added flexibility of, oh, we need to add an input, or we need to add an output, or we want to change what this is seeing. And it streamlines that process a whole lot. We also used it at the DC Convention Center for the last inaugural balls. There was one, we were split between 2 floors in the DC Convention Center. We had some artists on site, a total of 5 nodes, and we had 5 nodes of MediorNet, one at the TV truck, and one at each of the stages, and one at each of the front of house locations. Now you'll see in this picture that there's both a Micron and a Compact Pro, and that's done intentionally, and that's a little trick we like to do because of the IO connectivity, but the bandwidth connectivity as well. So we will establish our links based on the 10 gig links between the Microns because they have bigger bandwidth. But we need some added IO connectivity. So we need to be able to take audio signals in and out. We need to be able to take more than one Ethernet tunnel in and out. And all of that connectivity is on the Compact Pros. So we will marry a Micron with a Compact Pro and just tie up, you know, say 2 of the 8 possible links to the Micron with 4.25 gig links down to the Compact Pro to get that IO connectivity. But then we're using the bigger bandwidth between the Microns to get the signals distributed. And, you know, we had video utilities on the show that had not used this system before, and they were having some trouble getting signals back and forth. And at one point, I sat the head utility down and said, you know, here, just click on this computer interface, and you can put bars up on that signal. And he kind of stared at me with a weird look for about 15 seconds, and he says, really? Like, I don't have to run back and forth? I can just have my guy on the radio on the other end, and when I press this, it's going to put bars up? I said, yeah. So he put bars up, and the guy says, no, I don't see bars. He said, well, then you got the wrong thing plugged in. So, you know, that made him a convert for something that was a pretty distributed event to be able to troubleshoot pretty expeditiously without plugging or unplugging anything. A couple of shows we've had it on recently. For Telemundo, we do their billboard show every year with MediorNet, and it saves a good amount of setup and strike time with people that might not be too familiar with fiber. We can, the tech manager and I can go through and look at the fiber links and figure out what needs to be cleaned, where it needs to be cleaned, and get them up and running in a matter of hours rather than days. This last year with the Miss America pageant, they did the preliminary competitions, not with the truck, but just with the small fly pack. And by using MediorNet, we were able to give the prompter operator a router control. We were able to distribute signals to different places and add and change things on the fly. We've used this system for video distribution at the Mark Twain Prize. Again, a great example of, oh, we want to add this side monitor and we want it to switch between this signal and this signal. Okay, click on the computer and we're good to go. The biggest event I've been involved in with the deployment of MediorNet is this last year's Blizzard Entertainment BlizzCon. Riedel invited me out to be part of the MediorNet team that was actually 3 people. If you look at the graphic in the lower left of the corner, that's the network topology. I think there were, I forget, somewhere north of 30 nodes spread out amongst all the stages and production trucks. And the premise was that you could route anything anywhere. You could do multi-views, and working collaboratively with Blizzard and their AV provider, we were able to build them a pretty robust system. So that's the end of the slideshow. I guess we'll pause now and take a preliminary list of questions, and then we can switch over to the other computer and look at how this software all works. So let me switch here See if Pete has any questions up for me. Drats, back to the link.
I do have a question for you, Bill. When you
Go ahead. I can
have a moment.
multitask here.
Not a problem. So, one of the big questions I have in my mind is I've gone from managing audio to managing comms with my audio, right? We know that that's a normal workflow for anybody in our department. And then we add now video to this. So I saw your diagram there for, well, really every project, offered in the corporate space, and then the broadcast for the inaugural balls. How have you seen this impacting your workload then? Is there a different workflow that you've taken on? Is it harder? I get from a business standpoint, economics, but in terms of labor, how's your feeling on that? Because people are going to have to adopt a new process here.
Well, there's a couple different answers to that question. Getting people to trust you to move their signal around. We're all responsible for our own worlds, right? So getting the lighting guys to say, yeah, okay, I'll pass my DMX signal across your network rather than doing it on my own. Or, I'll pass my audio across that rather than doing it on my own. You got to build the trust with people first. And sometimes that comes down from a financial perspective when the client looks and says, hey, we can save this much money by doing it that way, then that's an easy decision. It's not your decision to make. Somebody controlling the dollars has made that decision. But there is trust involved in that. We generally send out anywhere between 1 and 3 texts, depending on what the show is and the size and scope of the show, and how much of it we're doing. Is somebody else pulling the fiber and we're just plugging it in, or are we pulling the fiber ourselves? So yeah, it helps everybody else. I haven't seen it. If your question relates to, gee, are we putting anybody else's jobs on the line? Not at all.
No, I'm thinking more along the lines of, does it feel like when you use the example of your utility, right? Here, go here, click on your bars, right?
Yep.
Now, I guess my question isn't so much are people being displaced by this, but rather, did you find it a hard adoption? How much video knowledge do you really need to have in order to be a part of this process?
You need basic video knowledge. You need to understand the difference between NTSC 4.3, video 720p, 1080i, and the different video standards. But beyond that, it's not real complicated.
And you're interfacing with your EIC, right? So your video IC, it's kind of a spigot thing here, right? Tell me what you want, where you want it. Here I am. You're a router, obviously from a troubleshooting standpoint. But yeah, I think that's was my point there, is to people to embrace some additional knowledge in these adjacent areas, disciplines maybe that we normally don't have to interact with so heavily. This will cause us to do that a little more if this is a platform that we're going to get trained on and run.
Correct, and depending how much you want to use it. I can tell you, by and large, the truck guys love it, because instead of having to spit out 27 program feeds off the side of their truck, they spit it out twice. We'll take a main, we'll take a redundant, and after that, they're done. Right. It distributes itself within the system.
Okay, well, that's where I was on this. Sorry, Pete, do you have any questions you wanted to throw in here?
I see some questions from Pete, if you want me to field some of them.
Yeah,
I've
go
got,
right on.
I can go through them. The first one we got was, what's a rough price on the different frames to buy?
To be honest with you, I would have to go back and look. I don't remember how much I've spent on this stuff. I know I have a lot of money invested in it.
More than $50
per piece. Oh yeah, a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have to be careful with the SFPs you're using.
Yep.
And I have a small fortune in SFPs invested in with Riedel as well. So
Cool. Okay. And so on the SFPs, instead of getting a $50 bidirectional, you go for a Cisco
Riedel has a
type
list
or
of waitlisted SFPs, and none of them are cheap. I tend to buy mine all through Riedel. I didn't do that for
right.
artist stuff, I can tell you that. But for MediorNet, when you're counting on it, absolutely.
I assume we'll be able to. Would you release this PowerPoint you have showed us, and we can post it with the video so people can download it and peruse it at their leisure, as it were?
Yeah, we can work on that.
Okay. There's a little blue handheld sitting on the desk behind young Saltzer. Is that your fiber tester?
It is. That's a new
And
toy we just got in.
What model is that? You want to unshare your unshare your thing so we can see the picture bigger.
Okay, hold on a second. Gotta find my cursor first. So let's end the slideshow.
You just click on the stop sharing button, and the webinar thing is all you have to do.
Yeah.
Now we got your camera. There we go. That's good.
So this here is
right.
an Expo. It is an OTDR. It is something that I just picked up off of eBay and actually have not had the opportunity to play around a whole lot with yet. I will tell you my experience with fiber testing. A visible light source is very important. Some type of power meter so that you can see how much light you're getting across the link is very important. And if you want to get real serious with it, a calibrated light source that you know exactly what that reference is feeding into the strand of fiber can be very important. So,
but also just having an LED that you can shine in it and somebody see on the other end.
That is a very basic part of it, but I can tell you that just because you see light coming out the other end doesn't mean the fiber's good.
Correct. This is a little device that I bought also on eBay that came in a kit. It's a TV set, and here's a ST connector that's in here, so I can see the dirt on it. There's also a probe. Yep. There's also a probe that I can stick in a hole, and it came with a kit of every different connector to connect to every different kinds of fiber connections, and a bunch of cleaning stuff, and it was $600. Now,
did you buy that new, or did you buy that on eBay?
Well, it was on eBay, so I don't really know if it really was new or not, but I'll have to find the link. There's a guy that sells this kit in a bag like this that is, he sells the whole kit all ready to go for $600. And I know that I've had a bunch of my friends buy this, and it's indispensable when you're running fiber to be able to determine that it's really clean. I mean, a lot of people will, some people I've even seen wipe it on their shirt, you know, or use a clicker to click it to try to clean it, which is better than nothing. But having this so you can actually look at it and see that it's really clean is terrific.
Yeah, we actually have a couple of those in our kits as well, and you know, being able to see in that detail is really best, because the clickers sometimes work. You know, I had a friend of mine.
Sometimes you need to use liquid to clean it off, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine said, "How do you clean your eyeglasses? Do you use the same method every time?" You know,
I have a really big giant clicker that I just point in my face and click my face.
Yeah, depending on what's on the end of that piece of fiber, you might need to, you know, try different methods to get it clean.
Yep. And using a simple device that puts in a calibrated light and measures it on the other end is helpful too. I do a lot of testing when I'm in a shop and I'm given all the stuff. I'll just quickly run light through it and measure what the loss is. Yeah. Another question was, Mr. Joe Foley should say it should be reiterated that it is a router and not a switching or mixing platform. Don't they have an option to do switching
Well,
within MediorNet as well?
They do. Their smart panels allow you to have essentially router control panels. So in that sense, it does switch. And because it's a time system, it doesn't have to be a glitch, but you're not going to get fades or wipes or any type of really video switching capability that you would with a true video mixer or
but you can use a smart panel to select among a half a dozen cameras, let's say, around your set that you see on your monitor up in front of you, in addition to using that panel as your intercom panel.
Absolutely. And, prompter ops will use that all the time to switch between the output of their prompter or a program feed or black. So in that sense, it will switch, but, Joe's point is well taken.
Right. Mark Saratenkos says, is there any Tyco or JPEG 2000 used in the video?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Why? Explain what what those are, so we know what he's talking about.
I'd have to do a little bit of research myself.
Okay.
I think they're both video standards, but that's why I said not to my knowledge.
Right.
Well, April 7th, when we talk with Riedel, we'll make sure that's on the punch list.
Fair enough. Kelly's saying, do you use RockNet in conjunction with MediorNet? Yes, we do for analog input output. Again, it depends on the application. It just depends on the IO that we need.
Right. Okay. Do the truck IECs also have a MediorNet software up and running simultaneously? How many copies can you run at the same time?
You can. It's multi-user, but it's not something that the truck EIC usually wants to get in with.
Right.
Most times we'll have a MediorNet tech on site, and they're responsible for managing the system.
Right. I did a show where I was in a ballroom on the other side of the venue, and I was doing like the breakout room for the ballroom, and I had video coming from the main floor. I had video leaving from our site, and I had a couple of different audios, and I was able to use to have my software on at the same time on that node, whereas the main theater was doing stuff like embedding, de-embedding for their site there. So it worked fine. And for the most part, I think I saw all their edits live.
It's true. Way better than multiple users in Artist.
Exactly.
And the system getting confused.
Main and redundant videos just for the program feeds, or is there room for expansion for multi-view and other camera ISO?
You can put in and take out of the system whatever you want to. So, we just as practice take a main and redundant program feed because it's so important and used everywhere, but only one of those signals is routed anywhere at any given time.
I assume A. Michaels is asking, is that we're spending the money on the fabrics or the Tektronix? Is that an OTDR?
That's a piece of video test gear. We actually have a Tektronix in our inventory. If you want to spend the money on it, the fabrics works pretty well.
Right.
It just depends what you want to do with it and what your application is.
They asked what is the model of this microscope camera? It's a JDSU model HP360P4. And I'll try to find that link on eBay where this guy is selling them. Normally they're twice that price. I don't know if he's buying them off a truck, falling off a truck, or if they're used. I don't really know. He doesn't say. isn't a router actually a type of switcher, just a matrix? I don't quite understand the question there.
Say it one more time. I don't see it on the list here.
Isn't a router actually a type of switcher?
You know, if we want to get into semantics, it depends on your perspective. I would say yes. Some people talk about routing switchers because you're changing destinations based on source assignments, or you're changing signals dynamically, and it's not an all or nothing. It's a router. So
okay.
I'm not sure how else really to respond to that one.
If there is no compression, how do you get 4 1.5 gig high def video signals across a 4.25 G-Link with everything else? The numbers don't seem to fit.
Well, you don't get 4. You get 6 across the 10 gig link. So on the Compact Pro, you get 2 1.5s across, so you're using up 3 gigs of bandwidth, and then you have another essentially 1.5 gigs for audio signals or whatever.
Nice thing about the MediorNet is if you plug a lot of video into it and you have, let's say, 2 fibers running between 2 links, it will tell you if you don't have enough fibers to do it right. And you just add more fibers.
Yep.
Between a particular node.
We can jump into some software here and make that a little bit more interesting for everyone.
Let me just,
question came
one
in.
more question.
AES67 signals for Riedel, Bolero, or newer comm panels. Absolutely.
Right.
We had an application for Telemundo that we were in the MGM, one of the MGM properties, working in the arena, if you will, for the main show, and they wanted to do a remote from the casino floor. The only way to get there was house fiber. The tech manager came to me and said, you know, we only have 4 fibers to get to this location, and I need 2 of them for my camera, but we need audio, we need IFB back, we need comms. How are we going to do this? And I said, well, drop a MediorNet node there. Really, we can do that? So again, we use the Micron with the 10 gig link and the Compact Pro for the IO connectivity. We dropped a Bolero antenna in the location. We had a C44 for redundant hardwired backups. We had an IFB that went to a wireless IFB transmitter. We took a feed in from wireless mic receiver so that the host could be completely wireless. And
you probably had an intercom panel or 2.
We could have. We didn't need them. So we got it all set up, tested it out great, and you know, the next day the director said, I don't like how that shot looks.
That's typical. And the last, I think the last current, I got a couple more. When you're using multiple software sessions at the same time, can I set one software session to only edit these couple of nodes and this one to only edit these couple of nodes, so there's no fighting over programming?
There are admin permissions, and you can set permissions based on what you want users to have access to. Yeah.
Okay. The question about a router or switcher is a little clarification here. Router versus switcher, with a comment in regards to Joe's question about the system not being a switcher as it's only a router. Sorry for the confusion. I don't see any confusion, but that's what questions are all about.
All good.
And that's the end of our questions for this moment. So go on to what you have, and I'm sure we'll have more come up.
Okay. So like I said earlier, and sorry you'll be seeing the side of my face as I look at this other computer to kind of walk you through some software. What you're seeing here is the MediorNet 6.0 software. There is a newer version out. I tend to be a little bit of a late adopter and not jump on everything straight out of the gate. there are some new features in this, so I'll apologize now if I stumble through where some things are laid out at. But if we look at net topology, it'll bring up this window here, which is actually already open here, and it shows you all of the nodes that we have online. It'll show you the links. A green line means the link is good. Blue means that there's a link there, but you haven't acknowledged it in the system yet, so it's not using it. And a yellow or a red line means that link is bad. If I click on that individual link, it will bring up a graphical picture of what that piece of hardware looks like. Under general settings, it's where I can name it. I can talk about the sync settings throughout the system. We'll come back to that later. I can set the frame address. Again, that shows all the nodes in the system along with the IP address for them. If we look at status, it'll tell you what firmware version it's running, the IP address, the node ID. It'll tell you how long it's been up, how long it's been connected. If I click on one of the BNCs, it'll show me that, hey, that's input 1. And it'll allow me to select whether that's HD, SD, 3G, 4K, or set to auto identify based on what it sees on the input connector. It's showing that there are no destinations for this signal at this point. On the left pane, it shows all the inputs that are available on that. If I look at the outputs, it'll show me all the outputs that are available. If I look at one of the outputs, here's where you get into a little bit of that glue. It'll show you graphically if it's going to de-embed frame synchronizer. You can do a caption or a time code burn in the window. You can re-embed audio before it goes out. So it's just kind of showing you the path. It shows that there's no connection to this destination at this point. If I look at Genlock, do I want to enable or not enable the frame synchronizer? Output loss on video, you can either do a freeze, you can set it to do gray, blue, or black output. You can do some timing here with the Genlock and the phase shift. That's how we were able to bring in that camera from the remote cart and time it to the video reference signal that we were getting. If I close that tab and go under time code, I can set whether it's the input channel name, the output channel name, or a user defined. I type in, this is program video. I can choose the text size and where that is located at on the screen. This gets pretty handy when you're setting up and you're trying to identify signals and make sure people have signals plugged into the right place. Similar thing goes for time code. I can turn time code on and decide what text size and decide where it's at on the screen. Close that window. Next one is audio. Here's how I embed. I can delay. I can control some gain. I can also put a test signal up on that channel so that we're verifying that we're getting the right thing. Close that window. Under the output, I can allow the video to be on, video off, or I can force a test pattern to that video output, and I can pick the flavor of video that I want to go there. And I want it to be 60 Hertz. So right now, if you look back up here, it shows bars. Might be hard to see across the internet, but that's a picture of bars as an HD signal going out that output. So if I ever have a question about what's going on in the output, it tells you right there what it is, okay? So if I look at the MADI connection on that frame, I can see that this is the MADI coming in, that's the MADI going out. Right now there's nothing routed. but I can pick whether it's 64, 56, 56 plus 1. It has an SRC in it. Breaks down the channels that I might be receiving down to 64. Again, allows you to delay those channels, set some gain and audio test signals as well. And if you had an SFP plugged in there, right now there's none, but it would tell you the health of that MADI SFP. Ethernet, there's one network. I pick the speed as to what speed I want. Well, why wouldn't I just always use gigabit? Well, remember, you have 10 gig links, and if you are using gigabit Ethernet for, you know, a router control panel that really only requires 10 megabit, then you're kind of wasting your bandwidth. So that's why it lets you choose and select that. And it'll show you all the links in the system. There's a better way to do this. So we're going to go and look at the links now. So if I close out of that tab, if I click on the green line here, come on. Up pops the health of those two links. Now, I will tell you that because we just had everything connected together to do a firmware upgrade, these are actually manufactured hard links between the SFPs. It's not a fiber connection. We'll show you some of those before we're done here, but you can see in the little gas gauge that the level between the receive on this side and the receive on this side is good. Right now you see no usage because I'm not routing anything between those. But let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and route something and we'll see what happens with that signal. So I'm going to go to System Explorer and I'm going to say, I'm going to pick my source, and that link that we were looking at was 101.57. So I'm going to go to 101, pretend I have video in, and you know what? We're going to go ahead and turn the test pattern on there, and we'll make it 1080i 5994. Now I want to route that to 201.11. So I come down here, maybe. There's 202. Oh, there's 201. Went too far. 201, video out 1. Now at this point, I can either hit the connect button up here to connect the signals, or I can simply drag and drop. And now that is routed. And if I close out of this window, you will now see that 47% of the bandwidth from node 101 to node 201 is being used. Now that's because that is a 4.25 gig link, which it says right here, link speed. And remember, 1.5 gig video signal times 2 would be 3 gigs. And so you're seeing 47%. And there's an amount of that link that's reserved for the diagnostic data and things passing back between the two.
Is there, let me ask a question about what you're doing right now. Is there somewhere in the system to measure the total latency between ports?
From input to output?
Correct.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'll have to dig into that a little bit. I think there is, the whole system is touted as having a maximum. It was in the PowerPoint here. Let me go back and see if I can find it real quick.
It's low though.
It's really low. I think it was 512 microseconds. So that's how you see the real-time usage and the link status. Again, if you go back to System Explorer, that's what I like to use for routing things. Sources, destinations, breaks down what you have available. If you look in the top window, you'll see that there's less signals available than in the bottom window. That's because the top window is a Micron with limited connectivity, and the bottom window is a Compact Pro with serial connection and RockNet and MADI. So let's say that I wanted to take these two audio signals, right, and route those to MADI output here. Again, I can just drag and drop, or I can come up here and hit connect. And now I've taken what was embedded on channel 1 and 2 of the video signal and routed it to MADI 1 and 2 right there. And it's done. It's that easy. I could also say, hey, I also want to send that to RockNet as audio 1 and 2. And it's done. And the little green connection over here on the right side shows you that it's done. This little arrow right here, there's no signal present right now. If there was signal present, that would be green, just showing signal presence. So there's no audio there right now. If I were to click here and give me the wrong thing. I should be able to turn on the test signal there. Well, we'll come back to that. But it'll show signal presence when there is signal sitting on the connection. So we'll take a quick pause there, see if we have any more questions to answer. So do all the frames do switching and quad splits, or is that an option? And where is the programming done in smart panels? So the programming for smart panels may be another webinar sometime that can get a little involved. As far as
is that programming done in Artist, or is it done in MediorNet?
Well, it depends.
Or is it both?
It depends. If it's an AES panel, then you're going to program it in Artist. If it's a smart panel and it's say an AES 67 connection, you're going to program the intercom side of it in Artist, but there's also going to be a web GUI where you have to get the connection resolved on both sides between the frame and the panel itself. And if you're using it as a router control panel, we've used Ember Plus is one of the protocols they support. And that's what we've used to do the routing and switching via the smart panels. And there's a whole programming process there. See a question about, is a Windows-based program only? No, it's quite easily able to run on a Mac. And that's generally where I run it. The machine I have up right now is indeed a Windows machine that you're seeing, but can be run on a Mac as well.
Is it running just in a browser, or is there an actual app that it runs on?
There's an actual Java app that it runs on.
And there was one question we missed before. What network gear do you recommend? Luminex?
Depends what we're doing. On our show networks, we're running Cisco 550s as our main backbone. As we expand our, when we started using Bolero, we were using SG 550s and that was supporting it fine. As we expand our Bolero demands, we've migrated the AES 67 traffic over to Luminex because it handles the PTP clocking better than the Cisco does.
And then you were talking about SFPs and choosing them. I was on a show recently where they had a Cisco SFP that had an OTDR function built into it. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
He just brought up a little GUI and was able to measure where the break was in his fiber right from the SFP.
Right from the SFP. Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like $500 or $600, but sure. There is a question, are you run parallels on the Mac? Well, with this particular thing, it doesn't really matter because you're running it on the Mac.
Correct. For when I'm running artist software, my native computer is a Mac. I use VMware and have a Windows instance there that I can program artists from. But for the MediorNet, it runs natively on a Mac.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so let's dig back into some other features with the MediorNet software. Let's talk about system mode real quick. There are two options. There's construction mode and production mode. In construction mode, you're not going to have the rerouting functionality that we talked about earlier, and that's purposeful. You know, if you pre-build the system at the shop and you're plugging it up and you plug in nodes 1 and 2, or let's say you plug in nodes 1 and 3 first, and in the shop, the signals we're getting from node 1 to 2 to 3. And as you plug that hardware up, if you're missing node 2, it's going to try and reroute those signals. And you're going to be chasing your tail a little bit because it's constantly rerouting and running out of bandwidth as you're setting the system up. So in construction mode, it lets you make the routes and uses the most efficient bandwidth to get signal from point A to point B. And if that link is missing, it doesn't reroute the signal. It assumes that you're still building the system and you don't want things constantly changing. When you switch to production mode is when it will start rerouting. And it reroutes based on priorities that you set. So if we go into System Explorer again, and we look at our outputs, and I'll look at this video output here that we have, you will see a little drop down here. And it says no reroute, low, medium, or high. Now, keep in mind that this is a German-built product, so high is number 3. But you set your priorities for how you want that signal to reroute, and it will continue trying to reroute signals until you are out of bandwidth. So if you're on a show site and you have program feeds and prompter feeds, maybe they're more important than what you're feeding to the dressing rooms. Or maybe they're more important than the confidence monitor that's backstage. So you would set that other signal as a lower or a medium priority. And that way, when it's rerouting, it prioritizes that bandwidth based on the preferences that you've set. And again, none of that is active until you choose production mode. There's errors here. Let's see what our errors are. It's probably going to tell me fiber level's too high.
What's the advantage of starting in programming mode versus why not just program the whole thing in show mode?
In production mode?
Yeah.
For instance, we like to program stuff at the shop before it goes out. That way we know it's all working. Okay. And again, if I start setting up nodes out of order, it's going to try and reroute things and eventually run out of bandwidth. And you're not going to be able to control that. No, I want program functioning between these two nodes for now, and I don't care about the node that's out on the red carpet right now because that's not set up yet.
So if you switch to programming mode without your red carpet set up, but it's already been programmed, does it have a problem with that?
If it's signals that aren't active, so you're getting red carpet program, it doesn't have another way to get that signal, so it's not going to try and reroute it, so that's fine. It's
Right.
more, you have 5 nodes around an arena, and how it's getting programmed or how it's getting prompter somewhere is not the most direct or efficient route, because it's missing part of its infrastructure.
Do you spend time purposely putting in backup routes, or having enough capability to have backup routes if you just pull out
Absolutely.
a node?
Absolutely. So we try to, I like to do this at a desk in the office, because you don't have the distractions of being on a show site. So that's
Yeah.
in some of the drawings that you saw on the PowerPoint there. That's how we sit down and figure out our bandwidth. And
Right.
I always try and go for a combination of ring and star topology, so that if you lose any one node, you don't lose the system. And I also, provided that we can, try to offer at least 100% redundancy, so that you could lose half your system and still operate, if that makes sense.
So in ring, obviously there's a backup there, but in star, do you just run multiple fiber links between them?
Yep.
And are they specified to be main or backup purposely in the programming? Or is it
No,
something
personally, I
take
just
care
kind of let the system manage that. But as you route things, it'll use all of one link before it starts spreading it across.
Right, okay. And will it, what kind of notice do you get when a link is overloaded? Do you have a pop-up, something on the screen that says this particular link is having overload?
It won't let you overload. And when you look at this live monitor screen that I'm in right now, it will tell you that, link such and such has failed.
Oh, okay. It just won't, it'll keep everything else running and just not send something, so it works. Okay.
Yep. So if you look at the live monitor here, you'll see that power supply 2 has failed. Again, that's because most of these are just set up in the shop for pushing firmware, so we don't have all the power supplies connected. But it'll tell you that. It'll tell you if there's an overtemp. This SFP receive power too high. Let's take a look at that one. Come on. Doesn't want to take me there from there. So let's go to our links page. Status, links. So it's going to be that one right there that's orange. And that is between one of the modular frames. And we can put a pad in there to reduce that down, but that's because, it's on a 1 meter fiber jumper instead of a 1,000-foot TAC-12. But in this one page, this is all your links in the system. If you were to go back here to your topology view and look at all of these, oh, that's another thing. You'll see here, this little 23% is the overall bandwidth of both links. So if I click here, hey, I have 2 links. I've used 47% of the one, and overall, I've used 23% of the capacity going from 101 to 201. If I was sending signals back from 201 to 101, that bandwidth usage would be there. This tells me how many links I have. And so from this view, you can get a pretty good perspective of what your capacities are. If we go back to this link status page, and we look at link statuses, right here is every link in your system that is available, right? And the status of those links. And the the usage right here, 47% and 1% of those. So in one page, you can get a pretty good idea of what's going on.
Would that be the page you monitor during the show?
I look at that, and I look at the topology view, because if you have an error here, and if you want, I'll walk over and you know, Tim, stay on that desktop, and we'll force an error here. Let's see what we got that we can pull. So let's pull one of those links. And look,
It
right
went
there.
red. Right, yep.
It went red. If I look at my error log, it's going to tell me that the hardware definition doesn't match because these connections were interrupted and I've got a problem, right? And now I only have one of two good links. And if I click on them, come on. It's going to show me, hey, Houston, you got a problem, okay? Now, I'll drag that down to the corner, and we're going to go plug that back in so that you can see that it comes right back up.
Does it indicate that it rerouted that, or it wouldn't have rerouted that because that doesn't have a link going anywhere else?
Because I wasn't in production mode, but we can do it again and show you.
Okay.
So there it is. It's back. It's green.
Right.
So good question, Pete. If I had gone back into system mode, production mode, right?
Right.
Let's look at those two links. And I'm going to try and pull the top one. And you'll see, you know what? We did not set our reroute priorities on those signals. So stand by. Operation.
That's something you have to set for every signal?
Yep.
Is whether or not so important it has to be rerouted?
We did set it on that one. Yes, at every output you have to set the priority. So we're going to pull the link. And with any luck, you will see it reroute. And just like that, it moved that bandwidth. Okay. Now,
nice.
if I restore that link,
it won't bother putting it back.
It won't put it back because it's going to assume that there may be an ongoing problem with that fiber link. And it doesn't want to keep passing you back and forth. So it's going to have no usage on that. And that gives you the ability to go check out what's going on.
Now, can you independently test? How would you test that link without, let's say, unplugging it? Can you send signal back and forth?
There is a way to force a signal across that, but all I really need to look at is my receive on either end.
Right, right.
If I see that as stable, if the link isn't stable, it'll pop up in your error log and tell you you have an unstable link.
So it might be just need cleaning or something.
Correct. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Let's go back to a couple of questions here while we have a minute. Says, I'm not sure this is right. What is the fiber spec needed to get the 10G links? You can get multi-mode or single mode SFPs. Personally, I don't understand why anybody's still using multi-mode SFPs. There used to be a drastic price difference between them, but in today's world, the cost is what I will call negligible. So our standard is to use single mode fiber and single mode SFPs. We use TAC12s, and I have not done anything with quad-cons or any of the multi pair fiber connectors. And I'm okay with the people that choose to go that route. I understand their logic. Personally, I don't want to have to lose 12 fiber paths if I pull off a Delphi connector to clean 1 or 2 strands because they were dirty. I'd much rather be able to individually address each strand, clean each strand individually, and handle it that way. That's just my take on it. So we have adopted ST connectors as a broadcast standard, and we just have those fanned out as TAC 12s at this point in time, and that's how we have our infrastructure built. Will it give you a pop-up and tell you it can't make the route? Yes, if I'm out of bandwidth, and we can prove that here if you like. Let's go between these two. So I'm going to go to 111, and I'm going to go video in. Now let's go to System Explorer. So we're going to route between 111 and 110 and 111. So here's node 110. Here's node, make that window up a little bit. 111. Video in, video out. So I'm going to take the first 6 signals, take them to the first 6 destinations, and I'm going to hit connect. And you're going to see that I've used 93% of the bandwidth there, right? So let's come back and let's try and do a 7th signal to a 7th output. Connect. Failure reason, not enough bandwidth. So I can't do it. So let's give ourselves another option, and this is going to require me to step away for a second and create another link. But if I were to say go to node 106 here to 111, and I'm not exactly sure what nodes they are. So in order to do that, Tim, do you want to bring up the camera? Well, hold on one second. Before you bring up the camera, I'm going to go to frame addresses. I know I want to talk about 106, and I'm going to hit identify frame. So Tim, if you bring up the camera and I hit identify frame, you're going to see all the lights flashing. This is 106. It's telling me, hey, I'm 106. Okay. So I want to take a link and make a link between 106 and 111. So now I got to go figure out what 111 is, right? So I'm going to go to do the same thing, identify a frame, and I'm going to see which one of the frames is flashing now. And I'm not seeing it. Did I not hit the button? 111. Oh, there it is. So, are you still on the camera? So we're going to grab a fiber jumper. And we're going to go from 106. I think this one was 111, but let's flash it one more time just to be sure. Identify frame, it is. So I'm going to slide in that SFP. And again, these are just hardwired jumpers, so we're not into real glass there. So we've identified the frame, and if we go back to the computer view, we on the computer view there? Yep. You'll see that a link has popped up blue here between 106 and 111. Blue tells me I have one of 0 links there. The system thinks there should be 0 links. but it's seeing 1. If I go into my config status, it's going to tell me, hey, I have links here. So if I take that, and I hit save all, now that link has turned green, and I have one link between 106 and 111. And the reason I did that is we're trying to send signals from 110 to 111, right? And we're out of bandwidth. Now, if we try to do that route again, I'll go back to System Explorer, 106, video in. I did that wrong. 110 to 111. You go 110, video in. Drag this window up. 111, video out. And we had routed the first 6 signals, right? So I'm going to go 7 to 7. I'm going to drag this window down so that you can see when I hit connect. Now it's not going to give me an error. It's going to show me that I've used 15% of the bandwidth. So it's now sending the signal from 110 this way, 15%, 15%. If I spread these all out, you'll see all of them are using 15% to get back to 111 because it saw that there was bandwidth available. So that's kind of how the system works. So let's pause real quick and see if we have any more questions coming in. Multimode does have a question here from Adam. It says, doesn't 10 gig multimode have a limited length as well? I believe 10 gigabit SFPs when using multimode are limited to 1,000 foot total, but I could be wrong. That is true. Single mode fiber and single mode SFPs, because they're laser and not LEDs, do have greater capacity to go further. Mark says, does everything need that much space for heat dissipation, or is it just left over for the future? Or from the past when the gear in the rack had to be much bigger? You're talking about how our gear is mounted in the racks. You're okay to stack these things one next to the other, but I have fat fingers. And when it comes to getting BNC connectors in that tight of space, I prefer to have a little space above and below. It also gives you the ability to pass the power and fiber connections that we put on the back of the rack into the front. That way the fiber's connected on the back and all your copper connections are coming to the front. But you could stack them straight on top of each other. In the case of connection between 2 different buildings with dark fiber, is there a possibility to use a fiber multiplexer with different wavelengths to connect the MediorNets or Microns? Riedel actually, in the early days of the modular system, did have a whole CWDM system that they used for connecting together with the 10 links.
Bill, we're having a little bit of a bandwidth problem. We're losing all your audio.
Oh, that's not.
If you don't need that shared screen anymore, you could lose that. Go back to just talking.
Yep. Sound okay, Pete?
There we go. You're sounding better now.
A little bit better.
Maybe
No,
I'll make you
still,
a presenter to
still losing you.
take that away. We'll see if we can get his webcam back. See if this, again, live webinaring. It's exciting. I wanted to address one thing because I think I started the confusion. So I wanted to bring this up. Somebody brought up the idea of, not the idea, but does this mean A2s are now having to take over a lot of the video utility stuff? I guess what I was referring to, and Pete, if you can weigh in on this too, is more so that to say, all right, hey, here's an opportunity for us to expand the systems we're managing, but also with the appropriate labor, like Bill mentioned, he has a MediorNet manager, and then of course the labor necessary to do that. But I think I was referring more to the fact that our camp is expanding, that we see opportunity, and then I think people that enjoy working on these products would also be able to see that training and expanding into other areas that are maybe non-traditional audio roles would be a great opportunity for them in the future. So not to looking to overload the A2s, not looking to add additional workload, but rather to say, hey, normally, comms, audio, I'm willing to be a part of that. And that was more my comment about the labor than hey, let's make the A2s work harder.
Well, I think that.
Go ahead, Pete.
Go ahead, Mac.
Okay. This MediorNet is primarily a video backbone. To me, it looks like less work for the A2s because the video utilities are going to be running the backbone, and you're going to come to the node,
right,
and you're going to either have an artist path. You can connect two nodes together through that and not have to run your own fiber, or you can stab RockNet through it and you can get audio across. And you didn't have to run the backbone.
I think the point is it's a whole nother department that takes care of all the interconnect. So all you have to do is an A2, you have to get from here to over there where the thing is, and then your audio shows up everywhere.
Yeah,
same with video, get over there.
There'll be
and
on a remote, there's a lot more utilities than A2s.
Well, also your MediorNet operator and MediorNet 2s won't be doing audio. They'll be doing the networking stuff.
Right,
the same with a Dante a manager. They don't do audio. They just do all the routing of the Dante. They sit at the computer to do all the routing. So it's literally another department, albeit
it
under the aegis of audio, but it can be considered another department.
Right. I think the thing there is that, number one, on the biggest shows, you're right, that what you're describing is that as we reduce in show size, even though complexity is going up, we're not always privileged to have as many positions, but this still seems pretty manageable, right? It's kind of like when we're talking RF coordinator and A2 RF coordinator, we're in certain size, it's okay. But then when you go above a certain thing, you're going to need more people. But I was also referring to if you're actively learning artist, if you're managing artist systems, then to learn to manage MediorNet is, to me, a logical next step, because it keeps you working, right? That yeah, maybe on this show I'm managing MediorNet, maybe on this show I'm managing artist, right? So that's where I'm always, how do we stay employed when we come out of this? The more tools we have in our toolbox, right, the more opportunities we're going to have. Now, yes, it'd be awesome to have a dedicated Dante. Every time I have Pete on a show, I at least want him to have 3 jobs, because it just keeps him busy, right? At least 3. And Bill, if you join us via audio, please feel free.
Yeah, my only comment would be, it becomes complicated if you're wearing too many hats. I would maintain that the MediorNet person, unless it's a real small system, needs to be a dedicated position.
I think that's and that's why we wanted to discuss it with you, because you're the one using it. You understand these things and that load, because inevitably the more features that you can offer, the more they will use, right?
I think a big part of it is where A. Michaels was saying that this is going to take away work from the A2s and take away work from the utilities. In reality, it's not. What it's going to do, as shows get more and more complicated, where you might have 100 different breakout rooms with audio and video in them, this is really the only platform that allows you to intelligently connect them and manage the connections. Otherwise, you'll have to have a lot more A2s. I mean, more than just what you need to run the MediorNet.
And again, going back to that convention center or hotel infrastructure, I don't know what you guys' experience have been, but a lot of places have fiber infrastructure, but they want to charge you to use it, and they want to charge you a lot of money to use it.
A lot of
so
money.
The more you can streamline that connectivity process, the happier the producers are going to be.
Yeah, I saw something that really struck me, because I think talking about redundancy and backups and the redundancy, and then when do we actually become unstable because we have too much redundancy, right? And I thought your illustration was perfect when it showed that with a single robust platform with redundant paths, we actually have a much better system design overall. And that's, I think, one of the strengths here. The other thing it came across with was your network, where you illustrated how you would use, 6 dedicated Ethernet ports. You don't have to touch them. It's not like you're doing any of the IT support. It's like, here's a path, put your router heads over here. They're yours. Do whatever you want with it, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Pete, how are we doing on the
illustration of
questions there?
routing and
Yeah, go.
the active
Right.
rerouting when you broke that connection was very impressive.
Yeah. There's a couple of extra new questions here, starting with Mark Branduardi. Oh, you already answered that one. That
Yeah,
was
we'd
about
already
the
talked about that one a little bit.
multiplexer. And then bandwidth planning is important. Does Riedel have an app to help you plan? Like, you just plug in how many audios, how many videos, and it tells you how many fibers you're going to have to put
They
up there.
do have an Excel sheet that works as a calculator, and you type in how many signals you need between 2 nodes, and it tells you how many links you need. But in
Right.
terms of getting out planning out a complex, you need to use multiple instances of that application. The best thing I can tell you, that the thing we use kind of as a rule of thumb, is figure that you got 6 video connections per 10 gig link. And
Right,
if you can
right.
do that math in your head, then that gets you pretty much of the way there.
And if you own a lot of fiber, no harm in just running a couple of extra lines.
Absolutely.
Do these boxes have options for CXP fiber connections? Whatever that is, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to Google real quick to see what a CXP fiber connection is.
Sounds like a train company to me.
The way we have ours broken out, the SFPs come with LC connectors on them, and we take that LC as a jumper to a backplane, and that backplane could be a TFOCA connector, it could be Quadcon, whatever you want it to be, as your fiber backplane. We take ours to individual ST strands, but that's where that conversion happens. I see one that says, can you run Dante on this network natively? There's no Dante IO for it, but you can certainly use one of the network paths to link Dante devices. It's just an Ethernet tunnel at that point in time.
It looks like a CXP is a kind of SFP. It does hardware wiring in it.
Then I would have to say no, because Riedel's very specific about what SFPs you can use.
Okay.
And I will also say that, interestingly, if anybody's looked at Riedel lately, they just bought Embryonics, which is an SFP company. So look for them to be integrating Embryonics into the MediorNet platform going forward.
Integrating in terms of?
These are the
recommending their
SFPs we
use?
want you to use. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
where do you run Dante on this network?
You would just connect
Just on an
Dante
Ethernet?
hardware on one node on an Ethernet tunnel and spit it out on an Ethernet tunnel on the other side. And
Okay.
we do that with Dante belt packs all the time. Drop a PoE switch on one end, and feed it your source on the other end.
A. Michael points out again that a production company might toss this group of work, as it were, into the A2 camp due to the video distro now being held in an audio world box. Well, it's not necessarily an audio world box. It could be in a Bill Saltzer box.
Yeah, or a video world box. It's a big video routing system.
Exactly. Riedel has a fabulous production system for their air races. And you go look in there, if you look in any typical video truck, it's a mass of wires run behind the racks. And you look in the Riedel, it's like 2 or 3 fibers run between each rack, and that's it. Because they just put MediorNet in everywhere, just plug a couple of fibers in, bingo, you're done.
I can address Tony Pitsley's question about the if there are any New York sound shops that have it. To the best of my knowledge, neither Sounder Associates nor Mask does, but since PRG and VER have joined, then the PRG VER consortium does, because I know I've used it with VER.
Yeah, I understand VER has a limited amount of it. We've cross-rented it from them a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, for all I know, I was using your gear.
Yeah. At this point in time, I've been told by Riedel that we are the biggest rental house as far as MediorNet goes in the United States. So if you need MediorNet gear, selfless plug gear, give me a call.
A. Michaels asks again, still harping on who does the work, I think. True enough, there are also times when the breakout rooms no longer have both an audio tech and a video tech, but only one or the other, depends on how big it is. With the other being the exception that it can do both, no matter how complex the system they're operating is. Well, I know that when I was doing the breakout room on that show, I was doing basically comms. And so I was doing the comms in the breakout room, and the MediorNet node came to me, which had the comms on it, but it also had the audio and the video, which I took care of making sure I got feeds to and from the other places. But that was just one node in a room. So there's obviously not a need for an entire MediorNet operator there.
All right. So, this talk had been prepped a little bit that we'd cover LQ a little bit. And I'm happy to do that. Maybe, guys, that's something we can set up for another training. I see we're about coming up on 2 hours in, so I don't want to hold people up too long.
Yeah,
but
the LQ is definitely a whole show on its own.
But across this system, we have pushed ClearCom, we have pushed Riedel and Bolero, we've pushed panels. As far as MediorNet goes, it's not just Riedel specific, it's kind of device agnostic. If you want to take Harris or Grass Valley router panels and push them across the Ethernet port, you can certainly do that. If you want to put DMX control across an Ethernet tunnel, you can certainly do that. There was a question that came in about timecode. Yes, the system does support timecode. It can come in, I believe, as either an audio signal or a video signal, depending on how you can embed that into the system. It's not something we've been asked to do very often, but yes, it can certainly pass timecode across the system. So any other pertinent questions out there before we start bringing this to a close?
Well, I think Stan Dickerson wraps it up there as all the systems become ever more intertwined: video, lighting, audio, automation, comms. There's always a little tiny bit of crossover between them, particularly embedding audio in the video signal and comms going to all the different locations, and automation needing data transmitted between different things, 422, etc. this is more system integration, and the hard sell of spending all this money on a new system. How do you sell that to producers?
Well, from my perspective, again, it comes down to a trust factor. You have to be able to demonstrate that the system is reliable, which, you know, 5
Right.
years into this, I can stand behind, and that even though it's intertwined, the biggest thing is, even though they're going to spend money renting the system, they're going to save money overall, whether it's in facility fiber cost or the cost of labor to run multiple cables, multiple fibers, multiple signal types between rooms. In the end, it's generally a cost savings for them. So that's the biggest selling point, along with the redundancy inherent in the system.
But then they go and they say, well, I'm hiring this video company to do all the video. They don't charge me for all those cables running between rooms. The audio company doesn't charge me over all the cables running to the stage in between rooms. Why should I hire another department?
Yeah, but the convention center does.
Exactly.
Good point. Always point at them.
Yeah.
That
No,
actually is a really, really good selling point where you say, look, instead of getting 10 fibers between the rooms, I just need 4. Look at all the saving you just did right there.
and Bill did a good example with his Alford project, right? See, there's
Yep.
always opportunity here to work together on that. And any more questions? Bill, do you have any like closing thoughts? Obviously, we really appreciate you being a part of this, and as always, you never disappoint with your willingness to look further ahead than some others. Do you have any recommendations for folks that are maybe becoming technicians with this, or companies?
You know, it's a great product. That's why we got behind it a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, with NAB being canceled this year, I don't think you're going to see some of the offerings that Riedel had hoped to launch. They are certainly behind this system and continue to develop it and support it. I look forward to it being more universally accepted in the future. That's really it in a nutshell. I think it's a great product. I think it's got great capabilities, and I wish more people were on board with it. In terms of how to get smart about using it, is to get your hands on it and sit in the shop and test passing signals from here to here and here to here, and making the routes and breaking it, just like we did with the example where, hey, I'm going to unplug this fiber. What happens? Just like anything else, the more you use it, the better you get at it.
The example you did about disconnecting the fibers and it automatically rerouting was wonderful. It was really terrific. Thank you very much. You don't often see a webinar demo where you have the practical application of the equipment shown.
Yeah. Kudos to you for that. Thanks for your time. And I will point out April 7th, Riedel Tuesday, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Jeff Sullivan will be joining us to talk through MediorNet. Now, a lot of you folks will be like, well, we just heard this with, what's different? Well, we're going to collect all the questions. We're going to walk through, and this is really from Riedel's perspective. This is them explaining to us and us coming back with, okay, now where's my opportunity to get the hands-on, to get my training that Bill, you rightfully pointed out. And looking at that software, that's not software you walk onto a show and learn, right? Where this is in a little different world than maybe where we were 15 years ago. So thanks again for that time, for setting everything that you did up, Bill. That was really insightful. I walked away with a lot of knowledge, and we'll look forward to the next time that we get to talk and join up with you and with everybody else. Pete, any closing notes?
We did have a question. When are there going to be more Riedel training? And you did mention the one on the April 7th on MediorNet, but we also have one on Thursday, April 9th at 2 p.m., which will be Bolero, all about Bolero standalone tips and techniques, not the Bolero used as part of Artist, but standalone. And then we'll do Artist and Bolero together on Thursday, April 14th at 3 p.m. And another Riedel Tuesday, April 21, which will be SMPTE 2110, which is going to sort of not only be SMPTE 2110, but will go into the networking world a little bit.
Right.
So we got tons of things, and all of these are available to see the schedule and sign up for on our website, practicalshowtech.com. And please come.
Enough
And from
said.
Bill's
So,
perspective,
Bill, yes, please.
thanks for the opportunity. And if people have more questions, you have my contact info. Drop me an email. The office is closed right now, but leave a message and we'll get back to you.
Absolutely. We'll make sure we have that up there on there. And thanks again for taking the time and sharing your shop and your afternoon, evening with us. So to everybody else, we'll talk to you on the next one. So long.
Kelly, I'm just going to put his phone number up there for a minute, so don't end the show here.
I won't end it until I see that number up there. Welcome to live webinaring. Is it a verb?
Actually, am
Better
I
hurry
already a
before we get
presenter?
interrupted.
I'm already
You
a
are a
presenter, I think.
presenter. Yep.
Okay,
You
how
are.
soon they forget. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. So long.